Well, a very good evening and many thanks indeed for joining us. My name is Omondo Tino and this is KTV Primetime News. It is a Monday, the 5th day of September, the year 2022. Tonight, we have a lot in store for you and what is happening in the country and of course beyond our borders locally. This day has really been waited for eagerly by Kenyans, waiting to know the fate of the presidency for the next 5 years. And the Supreme Court of Kenya today upheld the victory of Dr. William Samoei Ruto. And of course, this sets ground for him to be sworn in as the 5th president of the Republic of Kenya. On other news, to our colonial masters, the UK, the Conservative Party members settle on Liz Truss as the next party leader. And of course, she becomes the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Just a lot for you, but first let's take a look at the stories making headlines tonight. The Supreme Court upholds Dr. Ruto's victory in the disputed polls, paving way for his swearing. We accept the verdict, although we do not agree with it, says the legal team of the petitioner. 7 judgment affirms that the 4 commissioners actively participated in the tallying and verification of the results. President Uhuru gazettes 8 September as the first sitting for the 13th Parliament.
This is KUTV Primetime News with Omondi Otieno.
Welcome to the broadcast, and I'm not alone. I'm in the company of SHARON, WAMBUI, who is our sign language interpreter tonight, and we're streaming live this broadcast on our social media platforms on Facebook, KTV Kenya, on Twitter, KTV_Kenya, and YouTube at KTV Kenya Live. Now, the long-awaited presidential election petition verdict was finally rendered at the Supreme Court of Kenya on Monday, today confirming that the election of William Samoei Ruto as the 5th president of the Republic of Kenya was fair and square. And Odida gives us the report.
The Supreme Court of Kenya on Monday, September 5th, ruled that Deputy President William Ruto was validly elected as the 5th President of the Republic of Kenya. While delivering the judgment, the 7-judge bench unanimously validated the results announced by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission (IEBC) Chairman Wafula Chebukati.
We declare the election of the first respondent as President-elect to be varied under Article 143 of the Constitution. This being a matter cutting across the public interests, we order that each party do bear their own costs.
Chief Justice Martha Koome said Ruto garnered 50% plus 1 votes cast and indeed garnered the 7.1 million, while Odinga garnered 6.9 million as declared by the IEBC in regard to the petitioner's claims that Ruto had not attained the 50% plus 1 threshold.
We have deliberated on this proposition and found that it is not mathematically sound and that the rounding off done by IBC and the chairperson was correct. Consequently, we find that the petitioners did not provide a watertight case to warrant the setting aside of the results of the presidential election on the basis of not having met the threshold provided under Article 138(4)(a) of the Constitution.
The highest court in the land sided with Chebukati and IEBC, stating that the technology deployed during the exercise met the standards of integrity, verifiability, security and transparency to guarantee accurate and verifiable results.
In the absence of any evidence of violation of the Constitution and our electoral laws, how can we upset an election in which the people are participating without hindrance, as they made their political choices pursuant to Article 38 of the Constitution? To do this would be tantamount to subjecting the sovereign will of the Kenyan people.
Odinga, along with other petitioners, raised 9 demands questioning whether the election was rigged, complaints concerning the hacking of the KIMS machines, and the authenticity of Form 34A have also been dismissed by the judges. The court has also reiterated that each party that participated in the presidential petition will have to incur the cost of the case. Chief Justice Martha Koome, who read the summary of the decision of the 7-judge bench, said that she will issue a full report of the petition ruling in the next 3 weeks. Anodida, KUTV, Nairobi.
Now, the Supreme Court of Kenya today quenched the anxiety of Kenyans in the presidential election petition that sought to overturn the victory of William Ruto in the 2022 general elections. The focus now shifts to the swearing in of Dr. William Ruto to be the next president of the Republic of Kenya on the 13th of September as required by the Constitution. Following the grand ruling that was made by the Apex Court today on the disputed presidential elections of the 2022 polls, a series of activities is expected ahead of the swearing-in ceremony of Dr. William Ruto and Rigathi Gachagua as president and deputy president respectively. The Constitution stipulates in Article 141 that on the first Tuesday following the 7 days after the court gives its verdict, the president and his deputy shall be sworn in, which shall be on the 13th of September. The head of public service, Joseph Kinyua, who chairs the Presidential Transition Committee, is expected to swing into action and ensure a smooth handover of power from President Uhuru Kenyatta. The president-elect will assume office by taking and subscribing the oath of allegiance and the oath of execution of the functions of office. The president, as required by the Constitution, will be sworn in by the Chief Justice or the Deputy Chief Justice if the CJ is absent. The ruling made by the Supreme Court was a relieving moment for the Kenya Kwanza team, who expressed joy in winning the petition, saying the next focus will be in forming the government that shall unite the country.
And we want to say to all Kenyans that Kenya Kwanza government will not be just for the Kenya Kwanza supporters. It is a government for all the Kenyans. So do not feel left out as a Kenyan. Our doors are open. You belong here. We pray that there will be peace from now going forward. And don't feel as though you are not part of the incoming government.
The legal team that represented the main petitioners Raila Odinga and Martha Karua said they respect the decision of the Apex Court. However, they said they don't agree with the decision of the Supreme Court, alleging that the 7-judge bench did not rule in a just way. In a landmark ruling today, the Supreme Court of Kenya has upheld the victory of Dr. William Ruto in the 2022 general elections. The ramifications of this is therefore that Dr. William Ruto shall be sworn in as the 5th President of the Republic of Kenya on the 13th of September. And the Azimio presidential candidate Raila Odinga and Deputy President Martha Karua have opposed the decision by the Supreme Court to dismiss their evidence against the victory of President-elect Dr. William Ruto. However, both Odinga and Karua say they respect the ruling made by the Supreme Court but promise to continue with their struggle for transparency, accountability and democracy.
Nataka kuchukua tena fursa hii.
The Azimio party leader who contested for presidency on the August 9 general elections said that he opposes the ruling by the Supreme Court affirming President-elect William Ruto as the 5th President of the Republic of Kenya. Through a statement shared to the media, Raila Odinga said, I quote, "We have always stood for the rule of law and the Constitution. In this regard, we respect the opinion of the court, although we disagree with their decision today." End of quote. According to Raila, his lawyers provided sufficient factual evidence which was in support of their claims. The statement by Raila continues, "We find it incredible that the judges found against us all 9 grounds, and occasion resulted to unduly exaggerated language to refute our claims."
I want to say without a fear of contradiction that we do not agree with the decision of the Supreme Court. Like Al Gore, I will say we accept the decision, but we do not agree with it. And I'm saying this as a seasoned practitioner that courts sometimes make mistakes.
The servers were not opened. the involvement of the Venezuelans for a full month before, half a month before the elections and up to the 16th of August was not explained.
The Azimio party leader, who was vying for presidency for the 5th time now, has hinted that the decision by the Supreme Court is not the end for Azimio, and promised his supporters and Kenyans communication in the near future on their plans to continue the struggle for transparency, accountability, and democracy. In the same spirit, the Azimio deputy presidential candidate has opposed the ruling by the Supreme Court through her Twitter page. The court has spoken. I respect but disagree with the findings. Raila and Karua opposed Ruto and Gachagwa's victory, tabling a petition at the Supreme Court that combined the claims of all petitioners and dismissed them after a 14-day constitutionally bound dispute resolution timeline.
President Uhuru Kenyatta has finally gazetted September 8, 2022 as the first sitting of the 13th Parliament after days of waiting. The notice released today indicates that the two houses of Parliament, the National Assembly and the Senate, shall sit concurrently from 9 a.m. on Thursday in their respective debating chambers.
All the elected 290 members of the National Assembly and the 47 senators will on Thursday the 8th at 9 a.m. take oath of office after President Uhuru Kenyatta gazetted the first sitting of both the National Assembly and the Senate. Article 126 of the Constitution requires the President to declare via Gazette notice the date for the first sitting of the new House within 30 days after elections. The gazettement is critical to the business of the House since it's at the first sitting that MPs-elect are sworn in and the election of speakers and deputy speakers undertaken. Before the election of the speakers of the House, the clerks will discharge the duties of the Speaker. With the battle to consolidate numbers still ongoing, Bungoma Senator and former Senate Minority Leader Moses Wetangula of Kenya Kwanza and former Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka and former Speaker Kenneth Marende of Azimio have emerged as likely contenders for the House speakership. The party or coalition with majority of legislators will have its way in election of the Speaker. Wetangula has already confirmed that he is ready to take up the post and would resign as Bungoma Senator to pave way for a by-election. Samson Jura, KUTV.
President-elect Dr. William Ruto say that he will extend a hand of friendship to his political opponents and praise the judiciary and the Electoral Commission for upholding the will of the people.
Excellency, the President and the First Lady, let us be
The smile on the son of Sugoi stretched from ear to ear as a confirmation was certainly upon him as the 5th President of the Democratic Republic of Kenya.
And the people, Lord, who braved this hard season, oh God, even to...
In a Thanksgiving session at his Karen home, the DP cum President-elect William Samoei Ruto thanked the team that backed him up on the quest to jot his name in the history of Kenyan politics, having struck once and met the bullseye to succeed his boss, President Uhuru Kenyatta.
The millions of Kenyans who believed in us. Today, by voting for me, the millions who woke up early to go and vote, they have not only voted for me, but they have opened doors and gates for their own children in every village, in every neighborhood, knowing very well that their children as well can become leaders, and every child is free to dream, and every child is free to aspire to any office, and working hard, believing in God, they can get wherever they want to go.
Ruto hailed President Kenyatta, noting the lengthy moment that the two have been out of touch, noting no presence of any bad blood between them.
I will shortly be putting a call to my good friend, President Uhuru Kenyatta. We have not I haven't talked to him in months. But shortly I will be putting a call to him so that we can have a conversation on the process of transition. I know he worked hard in his own way, but the people of Kenya have made a decision. And we have absolutely no issue with the democratic choices of any Kenyan. You remember I said earlier, when I chose to support Uhuru Kenyatta, I did not give him conditions that he must support me. I have made that very clear.
He recognized the duty of the IEBC, commending its officers along with the judiciary in the completed court process, terming his regime the end of deceitful politics. Ruto categorically ruled out any chance of a handshake in his regime, noting that he would recognize the opposition for the important force it is in governance. According to the dictation of the Constitution, Ruto is to be sworn in 7 days after the Supreme Judgment on the polls and officially exercise the mandate of the Commander-in-Chief of the Republic of Kenya. Emmanuel Kutosi, KUTV.
Now, the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission Chairperson Wafula Chebukati has said that the Supreme Court verdict on the presidential petition has vindicated the Commission. He said that going forward, the Commission will engage stakeholders on their feedback on the post-election evaluation exercise, which will inform on the areas of improvement. The Supreme Court was of the view that the pointed out irregularities in the electoral process management were not of such magnitude to affect the outcome of the presidential election.
The Commission reiterates that election is a process and not an event. This process started immediately after 2017 general election, and the Commission tested its systems and processes in over the 40 by-elections in the last 5 years. Therefore, the Supreme Court judgment today is a testimony that the Commission conducted a free, fair, transparent and credible general election that met the democratic aspirations of the people of Kenya. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission is finally vindicated.
All right. Very interesting, of course, now that the Electoral Commission has said that the Supreme Court vindicated the Commission. Right. Away from that, the President Uhuru Kenyatta said that he rather vowed to oversee a smooth transition of power following the Monday's ruling by the Supreme Court upholding the election of William Ruto as the President-elect. Kenyatta, who had endorsed the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga as his preferred successor, said that he was committed to honoring the Supreme Court's decision by his constitutional mandate. Moving on, parents and stakeholders in the education system have been urged to join hands with the government for a smooth transition into the junior secondary school system. Principal Secretary of the State New Department for Implementation of the Curriculum Reform, Professor Fatuma Shege, said that parents have a huge responsibility in seeing that the program, they had a huge responsibility in the program because they are the major stakeholders.
During the launch of junior secondary schools classrooms and labs at Kerugoya Primary School in Kirinyaga County, Principal Secretary of the new State Department for Implementation of Curriculum Reforms, Professor Fatuma Chege, urged parents to help their children to embrace the critical transition in the new CBC curriculum. She She said that the ministry has already availed the select schools list in the CBC NEC portal, further acknowledging schools for fully complying with the ministry guidelines as far as setting up of the infrastructure was concerned. Kenya Private Schools Association Vice Chairman Solomon Munene thanked the government for their continual support, guidance, and giving an opportunity for students to advance their junior secondary education in private schools. Kirinyaga Central Sub-County Education Officer Kennedy Machora said that 25 private schools have been allowed to advance in their new education system. He expressed confidence that by next year there will be about 10,000 slots within the sub-county for the advancement for junior secondary education. Christine Mwando, KUTV.
Alright, it's 21 minutes past the top of the hour. It's time we take our first break here on KUTV Primetime News. The moment shall be coming back with the discussion of the night, the Supreme verdict. You don't want to miss this, so stay with us. See you on the other side.
Driving and riding without incidences on the road is such an amazing experience. But do you know while many road traffic crashes are avoidable, human behavior continues to be the leading cause? Speeding, lane indiscipline, drunk driving, distracted driving, failure to wear a helmet, and failure to use available pedestrian ways have been flagged by NTSA as the fatal 6 behaviors likely to lead to a fatal crash and serious injuries. As part of the Usalama Barabarani campaign, we request all road users to prevent these fatal 6 behaviors for their own safety and that of others. When driving, ensure your speed is within the stipulated limits. The road ahead is clear before overtaking. Stick to your lane. Keep left unless carefully overtaking. You're well rested if driving on long distances, and you never drink and drive. Usalama Barabarani starts with you. Fika Salama. This message is brought to you by the National Transport and Safety Authority and the European Union.
The percentage in which government is giving opportunities to this specific type of groups under the AGPO, like what percentage has the government given?
No, but like I said, you see, when a budget is done for every year, every ministry will be able to place their budget for it. But whatever is given to them, 30% of the budget for that ministry is dedicated to AGPO. 30%. So if let's assume, for instance, that a ministry is given 2 billion, for instance. Now, 30% of 2 billion would be about 600,000? 600 million. That will be dedicated to AGPO. And therefore, when you go to a ministry, as a young person, as a person living with disability, 600 million is actually meant for you.
This is The Agenda with Benturo Kumbuka and Colonel Retired Cyrus Oguna.
Sasa ni bora zaidi. Mwanzo mpya, mambo mapya. Msimu mwingine wa Boresha Kilimo unakuletea teknolojia ibuka, kilimo mseto, uongezaji thamani. Teknolojia dijitali ya mauzo inawezesha ufikiaji wa masoko. Soko moko yako, mahangaiko yako ya kufikia masoko yamefika kikomo, manake tunao Mkulima Young.
What Mkulima Young does is it connects farmers with the market.
Hii ni Boresha Kilimo kwa ushirikiano na Mkulima Young. Atafutaye hachoki na kichoka kesha pata. Kwa makala maalum ya kilimo, ungana nasi kila Jumamosi saa 6:30 kwenye kipindi ukipendacho Boresha Kilimo.
Imagine living in a society that embraces social justice and equal opportunities for all. On Woman Crush Wednesday, Rise Today, we bring you experts for meaningful conversations on matters gender equality.
Mimi nasaona hakuna gender equality as we speak.
So we continuously work with the men.
I feel that they're judging the girl. Parenthood.
Mind is very important in infertility.
Mental and physical health.
You need to be surrounded by a proper network.
After the healing process, nilikumbuka kuhusu boys da senye niliacha ghetto. Kila wakati nilikuwa najaribu kutafuta mbinu yenye naweza wafikishie juu.
I feel like if you have 15 minutes, if you have 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever amount of time, use it, because any physical activity is beneficial. No physical activity is dangerous for you.
And we touch on current affairs.
Marrying is a journey. It means you're taking a journey together.
I'm dying to be different. Changamoto ziko, but you can't sit there saying, oh, mimi nitafanya mziki siku yenye dozi takampe. You look at this person and you're like, wow, they just woke up and they found themselves here.
Join us every Wednesday morning at 7 to 10 a.m. here on Rise Today Woman Crush Wednesday. I am your host, Lina Gikunda.
Access to knowledge, solution to unanswered questions.
Guidelines to pursuing your rights and repossessing your property, intellectual or material.
This and more only on Law Matters.
Maelfu na maelfu ya wahamiaji wakiwa na watoto kutoka nchi za Amerika ya Kati wanaendelea kuwasili kwenye mpaka kati ya Marekani na Mexico.
The folks are going. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Ni habari kutoka pembe zote duniani.
Pepo Power si vuguvugu. Pepo Power ni idea.
Sazidi ananyonya, hanyonyi vizuri, anakuwa hayuko comfortable.
Jeshi la Jamhuri ya Kidemokrasia ya Kongo linapambana na waasi wa ADF.
Kwa sasa wanatoa wito kwa mashirika, makampuni na vile vituo vya uchukuzi.
Mambo mengi yatakwenda kama yalivyopangwa.
Hapa ni kuna mmoja wa viongozi wa chama cha wavuvi katika eneo hili.
Zaidi tunajaribu kuwapa chanjo ili ina boost ama inanyanyua kinga ya mwili, ndio inaenda kupelekea kupambana na virusi.
Ni duniani leo, Jumatatu mpaka Ijumaa, moja kwa moja kutoka VOA Swahili, Washington DC.
Ukiwa na dukuduku la michezo, tunafungua sanduku la dukuduku kwa ufahamu zaidi. Kila danadana, mitimpo, mifiatuko na harakati zote ugani, sisi ni wako mwandani. Kukurukakara zote nyanjani, haziwezi kuangaziwa zaidi ya micharazo michezoni. Mimi mwanaspoti wako matata Peter Pinches Mwaora, ndakuwa na jopo lenye maarifa sufufu, nikufahamishe na nikuburudishe wewe shabiki shakiki kwa uhakiki na kindakindaki.
You are watching KUTV Primetime News with Omondi Otieno.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Now, the moment Kenyans had been waiting for eagerly finally came to pass with the apex court in the land rendering a verdict on the disputed presidential election. The court upheld the victory of Dr. William Ruto, as was declared by the chairman of the Electoral Commission of Wafula Chebukati. The pronouncement by the 7-judge bench of the Supreme Court certainly have implications to the Kenyan political arena, which we seek to find out tonight. Joining me for the discussion is Wakili Joseph Karanja, an advocate of the High Court, and Kennedy Sankara, a political commentator. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for dedicating your time for this discussion. And probably we'll start with you, Sankara. What do you make of the verdict that was rendered by the Supreme Court today?
Well, thank you. The verdict brought clarity. You know, until the time of the verdict, most of Kenyans, based on Julius Oweto's submissions, believed that William Ruto was elected by Jose Camargo in Venezuela.
Right.
But those allegations have been thwarted by the Supreme Court judgment or verdict, and the official position is that he was elected by the people of Kenya in 8 August.
Right.
Majority of Kenyans may disagree with the Supreme Court verdict, but they've promised to respect it.
Right.
So we have implications, definitely, but that's the official position we are today.
All right. Wakili, we saw your fellow learned friends, of course, at the Supreme Court, and we saw that, of course, even when they were filing the petition, we saw a lorry coming full of evidence that they would present before the 7-judge bench. And I mean, the court overturned everything that they were presenting in their petition. So from a legal point of view, what do you make of the ruling that was made by the apex court on the land?
Thank you, Ken, and thank you for having me. First of all, let me say this blue suit has no affiliation to any political side, be it Azivio or UDA. Today, we witnessed the maturity of our judiciary. The lorry, in fact, was delivered, yes, and it had a lot of documents. But like my colleague has said, my learned colleague, Julie Soweto, did a fantastic job. Unfortunately, her evidence did not meet the threshold that has been set all through the petition since 2013. And it must be remembered that the basis for which a presidential election is either nullified or allowed is purely provided for in the Constitution.
Right.
So it's either your evidence meets the threshold or it doesn't meet. There is no middle ground. Yes.
All right, Sankara, maybe we go back to you because you are an ardent supporter of the Azimio camp. When they lost, the Azimio lost the presidential election, there were allegations that there were electoral malpractices in these 2022 general elections that could probably amount to nullification of the presidential results. So the expectations that the Azimio had in this 2022 general election, do you think the expectations that the Supreme Court rendered in the verdict were met, of course, by these, by the court?
Well, in their own wisdom, the Supreme Court ordered for 2 specific activities: a recount and also access to servers for verification of the uploaded Form 34As and nitty-gritties that happens with the servers. We had the oral submissions from the Azimio Brigade in the courts, but being that this is a matter that has been decided, that also does not prevent me from prosecuting in the court of public opinion. The Azimio claimed that there were involvement, illegal access, interference, and that's why I was specific in my quotation that Julie Soweto claimed that William Ruto was elected in Venezuela by Jose Camargo because there were trails of Jose Camargo form 34A that was uploaded in the system. So basically scrutinizing all these things, the burden of proof lies with the respondents, not the petitioners. They made an official allegation. Now it was upon the respondents to prove that did not exactly take place in the process. We saw the rebuttal, the submissions, to a reasonable percentage, the evidence was there. And if I'm not wrong, the Supreme Court said the evidence they provided, yes, but it was insufficient in their own eyes and wisdom. So definitely that do not strike out possibility of Azimio having defended their allegations to their ability. The only mismatch is their defense did not meet the threshold as quoted by the judges. So it leaves the Azimio with the position, and the official leader has spoken. He has said he respects the court verdict in as much as he disagrees with it, which is his constitutional right.
All right.
Yes.
All right, Wakili, maybe just to get an insight from you, because we understand that in the affidavits that were sworn by the petitioners and in the evidences that they were tabling before the 7-judge bench, we understand that at some point the Supreme Court Chief Justice, that is Martha Koome, said that there was misconduct by some of the advocates by swearing affidavits that were bearing falsehoods. And of course, probably after this verdict was rendered, we saw Senior Counsel James Orengo saying that the verdict was ideological and a mistake on the part of the court. So, in the submissions of the petitioners and during the rejoinder, we saw the points that they were arguing on. This issue that emerged, that there was falsehood in, the advocates swearing in, swearing affidavits that are bearing falsehood. So, the great rejoinder that we are seeing here at the Supreme Court in this petition, was it that they didn't have any form of evidence, or is it that only that the evidence didn't meet the constitutional threshold to probably satisfy what they had in mind? Of course, that was the nullification of this presidential election.
What the judges said, actually, it's not the lawyers who did the affidavits. It is the deponents of those affidavits. One of them was by the famous John Mark Kidongo, where he attached logs from the 2017 general elections, and which were discovered in the response by the IEBC. He swore a fresh affidavit, and in that fresh affidavit, he totally vacated the previous affidavit that had the contested logs. And the question the judges were posing to the advocates, who are very well decorated, who represented the petitioner and who did a fantastic job in their presentation of the evidence, was that how could you allow your clients to swear affidavits through hearsay? John Gidongo was telling us that he met in some place in Karen with a young man who had a laptop, who told him that forms were being captured from the sky and modified. And through the whole hearing, the judges kept on asking, how is it possible that a form that traveled by air was captured in the air and changed, whereas the one that traveled by road never changed?
Right.
Counsel Julie Soweto did a good job and presented that form that had a marking on the top where the name of the famous Joseph Mago appeared, but the hard copy form did not have that document. It did not have that background of Camargo, and that is why the court was saying the evidence may sound like it is very big now that it was brought by a truck, but it all ended up being hot air. It did not meet the threshold, which is above the balance of probabilities, but not beyond a reasonable doubt. So it might look like, when it's in the public, it might look like it actual sense Dr. Samoei William Ruto was elected in Venezuela. But the report that was made by the Registrar of the Judiciary after the servers were opened, after the scrutiny was done of all the polling stations requested by the petitioner, it turned out that there was no discrepancy between what the IEBC had announced and what the hard copy documents actually showed. Yes.
All right, maybe Wakili, maybe the other thing what do you wish that you emphasize for us, because Senior Counsel Orengo was saying that the verdict was ideological and a mistake on the part of the court, and even Kalonzo Musyoka, of course, he also a lawyer, saying that even though I do not agree, but I respect the decision of the court. So the counsels that were representing the petitioners, where exactly are they finding fault on the Supreme Court in the verdict that was rendered today?
Let us remember these are the same team of advocates who filed Raila 1 in 2017 and succeeded on the very, very same test that they have failed this time round. One, Wafula Chebukati, conducted this election in the manner, style, and fashion he was directed by the Maraga judgment in Raila 1 in 2017. And the parting shot of CJ Emeritus Maraga said, if you do not fix the irregularities that I have mentioned, I will once again nullify the elections. So Wafula went out and fixed the irregularities in the law, in the regulations, and conducted the elections in accordance with the Constitution. The burden of proving that the elections was so badly done that it could not stand the test of the Constitution was on Orengo and his team. They failed to satisfy the judge. They cannot then come back and complain that the judges rendered an ideological decision, while it was based on the evidence and facts that they presented to the court.
All right. Sankara, maybe the other thing that probably, of course, I would want to get from you, because what the Azimio team was anticipating in filing this petition is that there were a lot of malpractices in the electoral process that could sufficiently mount to nullification of the presidential election. But the Supreme Court has ruled otherwise. So what does this tell us? The kind of things that were emerging, the kind of things that were emanating in the Supreme Court when the Azimio team were making their submissions, terming them, of course, alleging that these were now the electoral malpractices. So should Kenyans just give it a blind eye, saying that everything was done constitutionally? The Electoral Commission conducted this election as anticipated by the Constitution.
First, before I respond, allow me to say Jose Kamago is not famous in Kenya because he has been trending not for the good deeds or allegations. The allegations that have been made against him are so grave for a patriot like myself to say Jose Kamago is famous. Maybe he's famous online in Venezuela. It is not in order for us to say that the elections was 100% perfect. Remember, that's why the judges quoted that the evidence were presented, but they were not insufficient. Election is not an event; it's a process. And I would quote the words of CJ Emeritus, David Maraga. He said, "Elections are not events; they are processes that take time, and the process must fall within the constitutional expectations." Personally, I've raised questions. It is in the public domain that I'm not having the first conversation on IBC. I've done it severally, almost 2 years even before these elections were conducted. And I was categorically speaking on the preparedness of IBC to handle a free, fair, verifiable presidential or general elections. It was categorical that there were some loopholes here and there that would sabotage the constitutional expectation of a free and fair elections. So as one who actively participated in the electoral process, it will be a big lie to tell myself and convince other fellow Kenyans that the elections were freely and fairly conducted. And that's why we refer to the verdict and say we respect the verdict, but we do not agree with it. I think we're still communicating. So the disagreement emanates from the dissatisfaction that originated from the visibly presented malpractices that might have been witnessed. But again, they may not have equally constituted to a nullification or the weight was not that much, but that does not rule the element of malpractices here and there. They were. The demonstrations, I'm just referring to the demonstrations that were done by the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition legal team, which the court termed as hot hair. So I can't rule that there were no malpractices. There were inconsistencies. I had even said it myself here that people who were constitutionally mandated to oversee the smooth running of elections did not have the knowledge to tell or to know what to be done when and how. That, I saw it when I went for my voting exercise in Kileleshwa. So these are things that happened. They actually happened, but maybe the scope of the court is that in as much as they were there and in reference to previous jurisdictions, there were reduced elements of inconsistencies that arise from IBC. But I would reiterate that election is a process. In procurement, we are told it is not about the product, it is about the process. So you can't garbage in, you can't feed in wrong information and expect, you can't feed in wrong data and expect the right information. It's garbage in, garbage out. You key in wrong information, you get the wrong result. So the output must be equivalent to what you gave out. So the IBC might have failed, and I believe they have learned, because we Kenyan judicial system, nullifying a presidential election is not a new thing. They will definitely do, because they don't do so to please some politicians or the political classes, but they do so to reaffirm the sovereignty of the people of Kenya and the supremacy of the Constitution, which is the guiding document on conducting elections generally.
All right. Now, Wakili, because there were a lot of references being made to the 2013 general elections. Of course, now that was being termed as Raila one, the cases that the judges were referring to. So we saw that from the contested, from the disputed previous elections that was nullified, they were making references to it. And of course, through the nullification of the elections, we saw a number of reinforcements being made to the electoral commissions, which probably amounted to what was to be considered to be a free, fair and credible elections in this 2022 general election. So in as much as yes, the needs and the desires of the petitioners were not met in the judgment that was made today, but what do you make of it? What do you make of this petition that was made by Raila Odinga and of course Martha Karua, trying to say that there were electoral malpractices, and of course probably should Kenyans give it a blind eye and focus on the next 5 years, and probably when the next general elections will be held, we go without fixing these issues that were emanating in these 2022 general elections?
First of all, we as Kenyans owe it to one Right Honorable Raila Odinga for the many great improvements he has done to our electoral laws, starting with the Kregler Commission in the year 2007.
Right.
The benefits of the elections that we did on the 9th of August, and the following day Kenyans woke up and went back to work, can only be credited to the many efforts, either in the forefront or behind the scenes, directly or indirectly engineered by the Right Honorable Prime Minister. What stood out between the 2013 petition all the way to this petition was one case by the one that was done through the civil society, formerly popularly known as the Maina Kiai decision, which at the end determined that presidential election ends at the polling station. And during the rebuttal by Mahat Somane, the advocate for IEBC, he proved to the court that not a single Form 34A had been altered in the server that was not consistent with the hard copy documents that the IEBC had provided certified copies to the court. And under Article 138, what Chebukati uses or used as required by law to declare the results of the president-elect or the results of the elections, presidential elections that is the hard copy document.
Right.
Remember, out of the over 49,000 polling stations, those Form 34As are filled in handwriting. You know, as a reason, as a precipitate for security features, so that when you had the learned judge Smokin Wanjala asking, how come the form that was being traveling by air was captured as the petitioners alleged, but the one that traveled by road was not captured?
Right.
When the judges said the evidence was hot air, they did not just dismiss that evidence. All they said is, do not bring hearsay to the court. And they appreciate that the elections, IEBC is not an individual, it is an organization, and it is handled, and the process is handled by human beings. So we are bound to have errors. And unfortunately, there is a principle of law that says, de minimis non curex lex, that of small things, the law knows no cure. And maybe that is why, as much as the Azimio team feels that their evidence was so huge, and that the outcome that the court has given out of the 9 issues, none of them passed the threshold, the buck still stopped with them. It was not for quote-unquote IEBC to prove that they conducted the election in accordance with the Constitution. It was for the petitioners to prove that the election was so badly conducted that it could not stand the test, which they failed to do in this instance. But we await the reasoned judgment. Within 21 days, we can make further allegations and further findings based on that reasoned judgment.
All right, probably on that, because the Supreme Court Judge, Martha Koome, said that Kenya should be waiting for a comprehensive judgment on the 21st. Should we expect anything different from what we saw today?
It will not be substantially different, but it will have reasons. Today they read to us their findings. They did not give us what is called the ratio decidendi, the reasons behind the findings, which is what they will be giving us. And that is how they will be showing the so-called hot air, or how the evidence failed to qualify the test that has been set through Raila 1 in 2013 and Raila 2 and the other petition in 2017. Yes.
All right. Sankara, the leaders allied to the Azimio team, they have said that they respect the decision of the Supreme Court in as much as, yes, they do not agree. But from what the ground is saying, have they accepted and do they agree with the decision of the Supreme Court?
You know, respecting constitution, Supreme Court verdict is just running away from the legal ramifications that may come with disobeying it.
Right.
But disagreeing with it, that is a constitutional right. You can disagree respectfully. So definitely they haven't accepted the outcome, but they respect it.
Right.
So any actions they are going to take, I believe, will be in the good faith for our progressive development as a country in the socio-political spheres. And again, let me just say something. You know, I'm a young person and I interact with information, not hearsay. It's sad at this particular point in time, considering the thresholds on which IBC declared Dr. William Ruto president-elect, he got vote of 7 million, Right Honorable Raila Odinga got 6 million. It is very wrong for Kenyans, or fellow Kenyans, or political leaders to spread the propaganda and mock the people from the other side. You know, you can let people lose, but do not rob them their dignity.
Right.
A person of the stature of Raila Odinga does not qualify to be drawn or painted in a wheelbarrow being pushed to Bondo. Raila, my learned friend has just told you that we owe it all to Raila.
Sure.
Most of the things that we are doing today, Raila has been championing for strengthened institutions and not individuals. And that's when the Supreme Court makes reference to previous jurisdictions on same matters brought before it by the same person, that automatically communicates a simple message that Raila wants a working system. So briefly, it is unfair for a millennial generation to draw a portrait of Raila in a wheelbarrow and spread it all over social media that is being taken to Bondo. How now? This man has spent all his lifetime fighting for institutional correctness, something that we find amiss in our country. In institutional correctness. This is what Raila has been fighting for. It is not in order for young people or political leaders to, at this particular point in time, to perpetuate such like conversations. It is a time to let those who lost have their dignity, they retain their dignity, they heal over this process, because at the end of the day, Kenya is bigger than Raila and Ruto. We need to move on, but we cannot move on when we keep on having antagonistic thoughts and actions. I think that is demeaning, and as a patriotic citizen, I don't think I will allow that or take it lightly. It's a caution that people must learn to create boundaries. There are people you can belittle and there are people you cannot belittle. First of all, running for a presidential election, winning a presidential petition in the Supreme Court, failing to win, those are not just mere achievements. They are great achievements, because the next elections to be conducted, the commission in charge will strictly adhere with the the verdict or the provisions or guidelines that will be given based on the observations that were made or loopholes were made in this election. So we cannot actually say Raila is less important in our country or political dispensation. No, that is very wrong. We must shun and desist.
All right. Now, probably as we end up, Wakili, we are seeing, of course, a government coming into play, but the win was a very slim win, because if Ruto had 50 point from some decimals, and of course Raila Odinga with, it was a very small margin of win for Dr. William Ruto. And now, looking at the government that we are going to get into, the new leadership of William Ruto and of course his deputy Rigathi Gachagua, what future are Kenyans staring at?
Well, during the campaigns they ran, they made a lot of promises. Actually, I am waiting to see how much of those promises they will deliver. They may have thought they would wink at us as Kenyans by telling us things they will do that they know they won't do. But the jury has been out as far as this election is concerned, and Kenyans have shown if you don't deliver, you will go.
Right.
There is no guarantee that Dr. William Samoei Ruto will be elected after the 5 years. He has a very huge task ahead of himself. He has to unite Kenya. The 6 million who voted for Raila Amolo Odinga are also Kenyans, and like you heard him say today, the majority will have their way, but the minority will still have to have their say. Maybe it's a time we have a conversation that the position of the official leader of opposition is enshrined in our constitution, so that we have a permanent position for checks and balances of the executive. And I welcome his idea of no handshakes. We need to have an opposition that checks the operations of government.
Right.
We don't want to have a one-sided government like the last government we've had of Uhuru and, I don't know whether to say Raila and Ruto or Uhuru and Raila alone. That hybrid setup, we do not want it again.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe just for the interest of time, Sankara, I say probably you had something to add on this here, but my director is telling me we need to do a story here. We hold on to what we have probably for another discussion tomorrow. So just moving on, the Supreme Court has today upheld the President-elect William Ruto's win and has affirmed that he met the 50% plus one, the 50% plus one threshold required by the Constitution. While issuing the final verdict, Justice Martha Koome said that the court had considered the different formulas raised by the petitioners and is confident that the results that were announced by the IBC chair Wafula Chebukati were correct.
While offering the final verdict on the presidential petition today at the Supreme Court, Lady Justice Martha Koome upheld the president-elect's win by confirming that Honorable William Samoei Ruto had met the constitutional threshold of 50+1 votes of the total votes cast. In her speech, she made clear that the IEBC had used the right formula in coming up with the numbers that they presented as the final outcome, which is the total votes counted less rejected votes divided by 2, which would amount to 50+1 votes. She further upheld the court's decision on the premise of the 2013 petition, which asserted that rejected ballot papers will not constitute a vote cast and will not be used. By doing so, a verdict was given in favor of the respondents, saying that the mathematics done by the IEBC was constitutionally accurate. In a unanimous decision, the judges at the Supreme Court sided with the respondents on this matter, having put into consideration all formulas raised by the petitioners, stating that the standard of proof met by the court was all in accordance with the Constitution. Stephanie Alice reporting for KUTV.
All right, let's now take a look at what's happening in the world of sports. Now, Menengai Oilers Rugby Club has lost one of their centre halves, Anthony Kibet, who succumbed to stab injuries after a night attack by unknown assailants on Saturday night in Nakuru. Kibet was in the company of his teammate Ibrahim Otieno, who is currently undertaking treatment in a local hospital in Nakuru. Police in Nakuru County Commander Peter Mwanza said that they have launched investigations following the fateful incident and other security cases in the area. Alright, and with that we call it a wrap here on KUTV Primetime News. Many thanks indeed for your valid company throughout the bulletin. Of sign language interpreter tonight has been Sharon WAMBUI. My good name is Omundi Otieno. Until tomorrow, you have a great night.